The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. Hour number 2 of tonight's show. It is August the 16th in the year 2016, Tuesday. And my guest this hour is Carolyn Shield. And what the heck is that?
I don't know.
Why am I hearing Donald Trump in the back?
I don't know.
Did you hear that?
I heard a little bit, yes.
My God, we're being haunted by Donald Trump. Do you do that wherever you go, Carolyn? Bring Donald Trump?
No. But I heard it, Rob. I did.
I thought I was hearing things. You know, Carolyn, you could have had a hell of a good time at my expense with this one by saying, Rob, what are you talking about? I didn't hear anything. Huh. Be still my beating heart. Hey, Carolyn.
He's not here, Rob. He's not here.
I don't. I'm starting to think he's not anywhere. Carolyn Shield is my special guest this hour. Exonation. Oh, to hell with this. This interview has gone to hell in a handbasket. I'm getting haunted by the spirit of Donald Trump, and he's still alive. You go figure that. I can't. All right, let's get on with the pleasantries. How are you, Carolyn?
I'm doing good, Rob. How are you?
I don't know right about now. Oh my gosh. I guess we got some cross chatter feed in there, which happens in this business. And you see, when I try to explain to people who go out and get EVPs of all the strange and wonderful stuff, I say it could just be cross channel chatter, and they say, "What's that?" This is what it is when Donald Trump's spirit talks to us on the show. Oh, my heavens. So what have you been up to that's new, thrilling, and exciting? I mean, besides bringing Donald Trump onto a radio show.
Oh, well, I just, we talked the last time about Da Vinci.
Yes.
And I have done a lot of research on him. And so it connected me. One of his favorite quotes, and I know you're right in with this, is you realize everything's connected to everything else.
It is.
And he's such a genius. And, and I would just ask you, I mean, you had talked about prophecy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And now I don't consider him a prophet, but like a visionary, because all of his, like if you ever go to a Da Vinci exhibition, it shows he had the vision of helicopters.
Yes, he did.
And submarines, scuba diving equipment and everything. And he was just an amazing person. And so when last time we talked, we were talking about Uriel, the archangel that was on the Virgin of the Rocks, which you were hilarious because you said that would be a great drink, which I agree. I agree with you. But
can you imagine going into a bar saying, "Excuse me, what would you like to drink, sir? I'd like a Virgin on the Rocks."
Virgin on the Rocks.
Well, I'm sorry, we don't have a Virgin on the Rock, but there's one sitting over there on the chair.
Yes, exactly.
Boom.
That was a great one.
Yeah.
But when I was doing the research on Uriel, he just it was just like Da Vinci, connecting here and connecting there. And I think we talked about how in the third secret of Fatima,
Yeah.
this angel with the flaming sword was part of the prophecy, or the secret.
Mm-hmm.
And that secret was suppressed. You know, you talk about, now, other prophecies, everybody spreads around. But this secret, it was suppressed, I mean, for many, many years. And they knew I deeply know that they knew darn well who the angel was with the flaming sword, which is Uriel. And they kind of distorted that whole secret, which, you know, that's fine, you know, and stuff like that. But it just, it's amazing how this angel is connected to so many different, really things that were suppressed, you know, by the church. And that was one of them with Lourdes. And then the other one was in the Dead Sea Scrolls too, which, you know, we'll talk about that later. But I was very concerned with this angel because of the suppression of it, and so I had this connection. And Fatima, we always talk about how that possibly could have been an extraterrestrial sighting, which I really think that could have happened, very much so, and how that whole thing has turned into a very big place for people to go, you know, and visit and do prayer and all that kind of
Carolyn,
stuff.
would you be able to explain to our listeners who may not know what the Lady of Fatima was? Because, you know, I'm sure there are a lot of people in the world that are now tuning into the show who have never even heard of that. So could you just give them a little idea of what it was all about?
Sure, and just let your listeners know, I'm not super Catholic or religious or anything, so I'm just relaying, you know, some of the interesting facts about it.
But I would like to let the listeners know that you are
70,000 people. It's called the Miracle of the Sun, and these three little children in Portugal had seen this vision of Our Lady, and this vision of Fatima was basically, they saw this disc in the sky. It's written down in a lot of eyewitness testimony, and it really and it flipped on its side and moved around, and people thought that it was the sun, or it could, you know, they thought it was the sun that was going to burn them and everything, and they got all scared and everything, and so that's pretty much what happened at Fatima. And then the three children, one of the two of the children died at early age, and then the one other eyewitness, Lucia, she ended up being a sister, which they kind of put her in a convent and didn't give her any access to anybody, hardly. And then she wrote this third secret of Fatima, which was supposed to be a message from Our Lady to the people. But what happened was it got suppressed. They wouldn't tell the people what was on the message. And this sighting was 1918, and it was the year 2000 finally that the Pope came out and let everybody know what the secret was. What
was the secret?
Well, part of the secret, I only got part of it
because
it was concerning, Uriel, but the first part was, it was the flaming, an angel with a flaming sword was pointing his sword at the earth, which was on fire, and Our Lady held his hand and said, penance, penance, penance. There was some, that's the part I was focusing on, but there was part about some attacks on the priests and popes and all that, or bishops and stuff, and I can see why they kind of said that part was John Paul II's attempted assassination, and so that was part of it. But my focus point was on the flaming sword, and we talked about Cardinal, at that time he was Cardinal Ratzinger,
yes,
had come out and talked about that the angel with the flaming sword was a sign of Revelations. but a person had been studying it for a while. I was like, oh, wait a minute, that's not Revelations, that's Genesis. And the angel with the flaming sword guards the gate of Eden and the tree of life.
And is that Uriel?
Yes, because Uriel, they don't really say it, because again, he's not supposed to be venerated. That's according to the church. So they that's his title, and it's just amazing. Of all the angels, Rob, that gets in the third secret, it's this one, the one with the flaming sword, which is his Hebrew name is like light, angel of light is what his Hebrew name is, and and then the other part that gets suppressed, like I said, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the one angel that is in there is Uriel, and a major part of the Book of Enoch. And the Book of Enoch was in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so, it's just fascinating to see this connection.
All the pieces to the puzzle are starting to fall into place.
It really is. Yeah. It really is. I mean, if I was them and somebody went to Pope Ratzinger at the time and said, hey, why don't you reinstate this angel? Give it up.
Exactly.
And he would not reinstate the angel.
Why not?
And I think we talked about it. Pope Ratzinger isn't Pope anymore.
That's right.
It's Pope Francis.
Let me ask you this. Why were the Dead Sea Scrolls then kept from people for over 40 years? Exactly.
It is amazing. And Rob, my gut feeling is it's because of the Book of Enoch. When you look at the Book of Enoch, it's all about the Watchers. It's about the Nephilim.
Right.
It's about how Uriel comes down and he teaches Enoch all about the stars and the planets and, seasons and, astrology, astronomy, all of these things he taught. These were all things that the church didn't want people to know about.
They still don't.
Yeah.
I believe that one of the truest verses in the Bible to show how controlling the church is one of the Psalms. The Lord is my shepherd. We don't need shepherds. We're not sheep.
Right.
Right. Let us
exactly.
If we have free will, why are you trying to lead us by the nose?
And I just could not believe. Yeah. I mean, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in the 1950s, and they didn't come out until like the 1990s. And that was under a lot of, lawsuits and all this kind of stuff. And it just, and then now that it's out, it's like, what was the big deal, and everything, except for there's a big change going on in the church, about alien life and extraterrestrial life. And I think that was it. There was like, okay, now people. You and I have talked about this over again about when is it time? It's okay to tell people, that there's extraterrestrial life out there in the universe. And you and I have seen that day where they're finally coming out with something that you and I have talked about for years and years. Yeah. They're finally coming out and saying, "Oh yeah, it's very possible."
It's
really going to happen.
People still get mad at me when I say, we talk about the Bible, we talk about Jesus, and people say, "Well, Rob, what is your take on the story of the Immaculate Conception?" And I say, well, it wasn't Immaculate Conception. What it was artificial insemination.
Exactly.
And
exactly,
boy,
Rob. Very good point.
Man,
very good point.
I'm beginning to think that I could cause World War III in the United Nations. All I have to do, people don't want the truth.
Yeah. Well, they forget that, and that's the other thing about the Garden of Eden, the Tree of Life.
Yeah.
We are starting to venture in. Our technology is advancing at such a rapid rate that, I can see we need to take a breath and make sure that what we're tampering with genetic modified things
big
and,
time.
Just DNA of human beings and everything. We just need to make sure that we're not crossing over into territory. And I think that's a little bit of the warning that's coming out. But you're right. Artificial insemination has been here and done, and oh my gosh, yeah. And our science is progressing at a rapid rate.
As much as you and I believe that Leonardo da Vinci was undoubtedly one of the great visionaries of all times, I also look at Gene Roddenberry as a visionary.
Yes, Rob. Yes.
And I believe that every so often in the timeline of our existence on this planet, a visionary is put in.
Yes.
Da Vinci, Roddenberry, then you've got the great masters like Jesus, Buddha.
Yes.
People don't like looking backwards, and I've always been the believer, well, in order to understand where we are today, where we're going tomorrow, we have to look back to see where we've come from.
Exactly.
Oh, it's hello.
Yeah.
I'm beginning to think that if people can't find that on their iPad or their smartphone, it can't be real. Give me a break.
That's right.
So,
and
you've been studying Da Vinci. You've been studying the angels. You've been studying the different philosophies. Are we finally catching on? Do you see the light at the end of the tunnel, and not the oncoming train, but I mean the light at the end of the tunnel where humanity is finally going to get their act together?
I do. I really do. Well, we're at a point where we have to do something. Like, and I can actually say, like the world on fire. We actually have to try different technologies. Solar power. We're making headway in cleaning our water up. And stuff. But these are things that we have. Would we do it? Earlier 20 years? No, it's only when we have to do it that we start doing these things. But hey, this is the amazing thing about science and technology, and how brilliant, Da Vinci, Roddenberry, the visionaries, these are the great people that are going to lead us into the future. And I'm holding out really a lot of hope. With all the great things that are being done, I really am holding out hope that unless other things happen, we do have a chance of changing things. Yeah, definitely.
Looking back in time, how would you explain the Nephilim? Were they the fallen angels? Were they just extraterrestrial visitors that the authors of the books and philosophical religions of way back when had no other way to describe them with their limited knowledge, that they called them fallen gods, or those who came from the sky?
And that was what was so dangerous about the Book of Enoch, because they really started, they were talking about these people that came from the heavens and came down and gave mankind knowledge, and that was that I could see how that would be threatening, and we have heard reports of how extraterrestrials have possibly given us technology to help us move along, or warned us about our technology or whatever, whether they're true or not. But my gut feeling is, now with the possibilities of all these planets, exoplanets out there that are possible life is on them, there's a very good possibility. And what an amazing thing that our books had this in there, that they've been there for over thousands of years. This information has been there. Yeah, exactly. So the Nephilim, I agree with you, could very possibly be extraterrestrials. Yeah.
Is there a connection between Richard the Lionhearted and the Nephilim?
There is, yeah, there is. I think so. The Nephilim, according to the church, and Richard the Lionhearted was back in the Crusades time, and he was really, really tall. He was a giant. I mean, they predict that he's like 6'4".
That's a giant?
And yeah,
I'm 6'5".
But at that time,
I see.
At that time, Rob, all these guys were a lot shorter than him. So he was like a giant, okay. At those times. And you can go to the Abbey Front, where he's buried, and his his effigy. The sarcophagus is like really tall, where it shows him. And it's been written in the history books that because he was tall, I think he had the feeling that he had the blood of the Nephilim. Okay, not he used to call it Satan's blood, but it was the blood of the Nephilim, because he must have had access to these books about the Nephilim mating with women and then producing the giants. And there's actual written statements where he thought he had the blood of, he said Satan, but I think it was a referral to the blood of the Nephilim. And there are statements of that, because his family was always fighting, and he always, had, they were not the loveliest family around, but I do think that there was a part of the royal families that St. Louis the Ninth of France, he was especially tall. So I think there was part of the monarchy that believed that they did have the blood of the Nephilim.
Well, that explains a lot of things to me. That's why I feel at times I'm so regal. And here I thought I was the world's tallest leprechaun. What can I tell you?
To tell you what's a really interesting place is the Cathedral Chartres. The stained glass windows date all the way back to the time of Eleanor of Aquitaine, Blanche Castile, all those guys back at that time. And there is the window of Noah's Ark there. And they have some fascinating windows. To this day, historians don't know how to interpret them. And the one is of the giant, and he's holding like Orion, the star Orion constellation. He has like a sword or like a sword. And that to me represents Orion constellation. If you know the story of Orion in Greek legend, he was also a giant, okay? And then there's another stained glass window that's a woman talking to little men, and stuff. And so I don't know if that's, a woman giant, which that's got all the historians kind of wondering, because you don't really hear about women giants. You just hear mostly of men giants. So it's really got everybody stumped. The historians, if you go on there, they have no explanation for these windows. But it also kind of tells me that, Eleanor of Aquitaine, who was the mother of Richard the Lionheart, Blanche Castile was she was connected too.
Did we lose our guest? Exonation, I think that we have just lost our guest, but what we're going to do is we are going to take a short break here, and we will try and get Carolyn back. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and we'll be back with Carolyn on the other side of this break. Don't go away. And welcome back, everyone. I guess you're all wondering if Carolyn Shield was abducted by aliens. Or maybe the Nephilim came and got her. You're probably asking yourselves if it was because she enticed me and led me down the garden path to creating the Virgin on the Rocks. All of these are true, but she's back.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Hey, you kidding? I loved it. It gave me something to, bug you about. Oh my gosh. Welcome back, Exo Nation. Welcome back, Carolyn Shield. Carolyn's website is, what's your website, Carolyn?
Urielsjustice.com.
And that is URIELS justice.com. What do you think the biggest secret that is still being held back by religious organizations and religious philosophies could be?
Oh, I think the connection with extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest secrets out there. Yeah.
Can you just imagine you and I being given access to the Vatican vault?
Woo-hoo. Oh my gosh. Yes. And that's what I'm kind of, they've known this for a long time. Mm-hmm. And it goes way back. I mean, this is not something just recently. They've known a lot of, and the thing about researchers, we have to just hunt around for all these little hints that has missed, and like those stained glass windows of the deluge, mm-hmm. And just how different they were, and St. Louis, his Bible still exists to this day. And, the Freemasons, they always talk about the great architect and the great geometrician. But in the St. Louis Moral Bible that was, in Toledo, Spain, it was kept for like over hundreds of years.
Right.
There is the great architect with the compass mm-hmm. in his hand, designing the universe. And it just shows me that the people in the ancient times mm-hmm. were finding all these, like Newgrange, Stonehenge, all these are related to the stars and everything. Our ancient people were well aware of the possibility of life on other planets and star systems. So I just know in my heart they know it too, and that's why they're things are just coming to a point where I do think we're gonna get an announcement somewhere. I don't know if you and I will be able to see it, but hopefully we will, because we've been talking about it for years.
Let me ask you a question. If there are Freemasons, are there Masons that charge?
Oh, yes, there is.
I was wondering why they're called Freemasons.
I don't know, though. That's a good question, why they're free. Well, I guess because they're free to do whatever they want, I guess.
I wonder if they drink...
The Mason idea of the great architect, it goes all the way back to, way back, or the story goes back to that. I think all the way to Plato and his cosmology and stuff, yeah.
Tell me about Oak Island, Nova Scotia.
Oh, wow. Well, I've done a lot of research on the Acadians because I live down in Houston, which is close to New Orleans. And, I've talked to a lot of Acadians. They're very, the ones that live in Nova Scotia and the Cajuns that live down here in Louisiana. They're very mystical, very spiritual people. They're very family-orientated. And my whole thing with the guys in Oak Island is I really think instead of just digging everywhere, they're starting to do that with their program, is starting to talk about the legends of the people there and everything. They really need to talk to the Acadians, the people that live there. Their families had lived there all the way till the expulsion. A lot of them came back. I've had a chance to talk to them. They own property up there. they have a lot to say, of the mysteries of that area and stuff. And there is a my feeling is there's a treasure there. The treasure is, if you see, have you seen the show, Rob?
Yes, I have.
Okay, well, Blankenship, I think that's his name. He's like 90 years old, and the other guy, he's like over 92. And those guys, that's amazing. These men, it's amazing the lifespan they have.
Well, that's because they eat a lot of lobsters.
Well, that's true.
Yep.
But from what the Acadians have told me, up there in Nova Scotia, they have some of the purest water in the world.
And they also have some of the strongest moonshine in the world. And that's a fact.
And I really do think that in the future, that is going to be one heck of a treasure. And, a treasure for you and me is everybody's idea of a treasure is different.
What's your idea of a treasure?
Oh, my gosh. I would think pure water would be really a fantastic treasure. Yeah, that would be an amazing treasure. And I think the Acadians know that they are sitting on a very valuable piece of property up there. That's just one aspect of it. They're just, most of them, a lot of the families up there, they've gone through DNA analysis.
Yeah.
A lot of them are connected to the Native Americans because they intermarried up there.
Yep.
And
that's because they keep on drinking that moonshine.
And they're so spiritual.
Yes.
They believe in all the nature spirits. Even though a lot of them are Christian, a lot of them have held that spirit world connection.
Yeah, but that is the influence of the Native Canadians.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so anyway, so I've talked to some of those, and the one thing about the island that fascinates me is the triangle. I've done some research on that, and if you go to Montreal, in the Basilica there,
yes,
you will see some of the early settlers. The history, is in the stained glass windows.
I have to ask you, what island were you talking about?
You mean like the Oak Island?
Oh,
triangle?
I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, fine. I'm sorry. I kind of got mixed up there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, Oak Island has this one area that they've been looking at and drilling at, or whatever. It's a triangle.
Yes.
And the triangle is, a very symbolic thing, symbol for it goes all the way back to France, and all the way back to St. Louis and that. The Golden Triangle, and it has, the Tetragrammaton name inside it. And if you go in there, in the Basilica, you'll see multiple symbols of the Golden Triangle. That's like one of their very religious symbols. And so I would say that would be my gut feeling is the Acadians were incredible people. They went through a lot of hardship. There was a big fight between Britain and France, and they got the bad end of the deal, and they were expelled. And some of the families came back to Nova Scotia and lived. Those are the ones I've talked to. And then I've also talked to the Cajuns who live down here in Louisiana, and they have the ones down here in Louisiana. They have connections with pirates, and I think one of the things that they found on Oak Island was a pirate coin. And one of our famous pirates is Jean Lafitte, okay? Yeah. And he had a huge network. Now, he might be a little farther down, but if there was any hidden treasure of any sort needed to be transported, it would probably have to go through a pirate system.
Well, isn't there also a connection between Oak Island, the treasure, and the Templars?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and and then my connection with the Templars is Sognac, the Grand Master. He was in the Crusades with Louis IX, all his information is in Joinville's memoirs, and some of the stuff that Matthew Paris, a historian at that time, did. Sonyak had come in contact with the Holy Grail. It's documented. The Holy Grail at that time was the blood of Christ. And he actually, in Matthew Paris's things, the Templars, like you were saying, you did a great comparison, Rob. The pirates and the Templars, the system was the same. They had huge ships. They transported everything all over the place. They were the ones to be trusted. They also were pirates. They raided, and everything. So the whole pirate system probably came from the Templars. And so if you're going to transport anything of very importance, it'd have to go through them. And Sonyak transported the big gift of a crystal jar of supposedly Christ's blood to the King of England at the time. And he had this big parade where he got the glass. But, after Henry VIII went into the abbeys and crushed everything, nobody can find that crystal vial of whatever, the blood of Christ.
Well, wouldn't the blood of Christ kind of evaporate or kind of get dry after a while? Because they didn't have the same chemicals that we have today that are used in the labs to make sure the blood doesn't dry up.
Evidently, this blood was liquid. And it had healing powers. That was what was written in
something like what's the Spear of Destiny also?
Yes, exactly.
Right,
exactly.
Gotcha.
So you're looking at, like I said, we started on this, what a treasure to you and me is different to somebody else.
Yeah.
So those, St. Louis, the Crown of Thorns, he almost bankrupted France just to pay for the Crown of Thorns, But if somebody else saw Crown of Thorns, they would like, oh, wow, that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But, the Templars, and you're right, the Templars were, and, okay, getting back to the Acadians, Rob, you're just like, great about this, is that the Acadians believe they are the relatives of the Templar families.
Mm-hmm.
And, the Louis, when you go to St. Louis Cathedral down in New Orleans, there is a stained glass window that shows Blanche Castile teaching her children all these things, these books and everything. And in the background, there's this reptilian eye that's behind on the glass. It's very evil looking, thing that hangs over the children. And nobody will tell you this, Rob, but your listeners are really getting lucky on this one. But what that's insinuating on an Acadian level is that the Capetians were cursed. The whole line was cursed. And the reason they were cursed is because Louis's son, Philip, betrayed the Templars. On October 13th, he arrested the Templars. He burned at the stake de Molay. And the Acadians just didn't forget it. I think that was, if they're Templar families, they didn't forget it.
Well, isn't it believed that a number of the Templars also escaped from France and ended up in either Nova Scotia or down in Louisiana?
Yes, exactly. Because then when you start talking to the families, they start telling you that, and there's an example, okay, and we're going to get back to Sonyak, the Grand Master. So you go into the New Orleans Cathedral. In Joinville's memoirs, and I have a little connection with Sonyak in the fact that one of the battles was during my birthday, in February 11th. And it's the Battle of, I think it's Mansoura. The first battle, he lost an eye in the battle. Have you seen the Game of Thrones?
Yeah, oh yes, I love it.
Okay, so like the Game of Thrones, imagine the Battle of Bastards. The picture of Jon Snow taking on all of the army. Mm-hmm. That is an exact depiction of what Sonyak did in the Crusades. There was like 300 or 80 people that were up against him, and there were only two survivors of the battle, and that was Sonyak. And here this guy was supposed to be a diplomat. He wasn't, but he was a great swordsman, and he survived, but he did lose an eye, and then he also, in the next battle, he lost his other eye, but Joinville said there was like the field was covered with arrows where he died at. But anyway, Sonyak is a relative. There's a house that's very old in New Orleans. I don't know if you've ever been to the Zoniat house.
No, I haven't.
Soniat. That is, when you came over to the New World, you change your names off and on. That's a relative of Zoniak's. And so in the cathedral, stained glass windows, there's a guy kneeling, a military man kneeling with his a patch over his eye. And I feel like that's the Zoniac's symbolism for their family that died in the Crusades. And it was all during the St. Louis's crusade. The Sonyak house is still in existence in New Orleans. He went back to his his relatives' ancestral ground in France, which is Belcastel. And he found a sword there, and he brought it back home. Whether it's the Sonyak sword of that late, he just brought it home as a memento of his family relative. But that's an example, Rob, of the Acadians' dedication and memories of those Templars that fought in the Crusades. That they have a lot of great memories of that.
And yet we're still fighting the same battle that was being fought in the Crusades so many years ago.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It is really a repeat of history, and it's and I'm sure the families are, the families all believe that it was a great move to the New World. They wanted to leave the old world, and start their own path. But their spirituality still exists. But yeah, it's an amazing. They're just amazing people, really. They're just amazing.
These are very trying times that we're in. There's a lot of conflicts all over the place. We see the new serpents rising their heads. We've got North Korea, we've got China, we've got Japan. We've got what's going on in the Middle East. We have what's going on in Europe with the immigration problems that they're facing. And yet now there's a new story that was out today that Washington is really concerned because a lot of Africans, Asians, and I forget what the third country was, are finding their way to Mexico to cross into the United States. Mm-hmm. So how are the angels coping with all these problems? And not to mention the political arena that you folks have down there.
Well, really, it is a dilemma, and you can see this whole thing isn't this a repeat of history? This is the same thing of the Roman Empire, when all the Huns and all the other people were trying to get into Rome, to the civilization. They're trying to get food is basically what they were doing because they were starving and everything. So yeah, we are in a really amazing time, and Rome didn't survive. That's the scary part. They, even with all their big armies, they had they couldn't keep all of the horde coming in. I think until the world starts changing, providing for their own people and giving them a good standard of living, you're going to see that influx. And, that people who want to do good for their children and they want to give them an opportunity. And here's where the opportunities are. And, oh my gosh, yeah, we have one heck of a battle coming up. We really do.
Do you think that this is the battle that's depicted in so many religious books as Armageddon? I don't,
I hope not.
Yeah, so do I.
But it does give me a wonder about, just these little, the way things are going.
Mm-hmm.
It really does make you take back and say, are we heading for World War III? Yeah, that would be an Armageddon kind of moment. Yeah, exactly.
Do you think that if the time was come that the buttons had been pushed, the missiles are being launched, that there would be divine intervention?
You had asked me this question about angels, too, about, why don't they step in and solve the problems for us? And I really think they try their best to give us our guidance and everything, but there's a certain point where we're in charge of our destiny.
Yeah.
And you know what? I don't think this is the only time mankind has come to these moments. I think mankind's a lot older than we give it. Civilization's a lot older than we give it credit. And I think the bad part is we keep making the same mistakes over and over again.
Well, I believe that part of that is to blame with historians and academia, because we don't know the truth. Look, listen, they're still trying to tell us, and they're still teaching the kids in school today, that Christopher Columbus discovered the Americas, and we know for a fact
that is a sore subject with me. You're absolutely right. Yep.
So even if the truth was known, they would be the last to let us know what the truth is, because it would show that they were not the all-knowing that they want to be known as. Exactly.
But the internet, it's got its blessings and then it's got its curse. The awesome part about the internet is the knowledge is all there, just open. There's so much there that you can get access to.
Hey, I just got told by my producer our time is up.
Oh my gosh!
Listen, do me a favor.
I hate to go.
Do me a favor. Come back again soon.
I will.
I love our discussions.
You take care.
You too, my dear friend. And one day you and I will meet, and we will walk into a bar together, and I will
order the Virgin on the Rocks. Right?
I will order us 2 Virgins on the Rocks.
All right, hon. Thank you.
Until then, take care of yourself, and blessings to you and yours.
You blessings too.
Bye-bye,
all right,
Carolyn.
bye-bye.
All right, Exo Nation, I will be back on the other side of this break. We're going to be talking about coincidences with Dr. Bernard Beitman. This is the Exxon. I am Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you live and around the world from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.